Greetings, Facebook Live. Welcome to the most unproductive day of really the calendar. It is the start of the NCAA Tournament. I am Ben Axelrod. I am a digital producer here at WKYC, and we are going to fill out a bracket together. I've put a lot of research into this. I'm a huge college basketball fan, and I'm going to share my bracket with you, maybe give you some advice as you get those last-second brackets in here on the eve or the start of the NCAA Tournament. Let's start up here in the South region. No need to really go over the 1 versus 16 matchups. You should never pick a 16 over a 1. It's never happened before. I guarantee it never will happen. So we're going to go ahead and put Virginia in the round of 32. Moving on to the 8-9 matchup between Creighton and Kansas State. Sometimes, you know, these 8-9 matchups, they're really a toss-up. I tend to go, though, with the 9 seed. Sometimes in a tournament pool, you will get more points for picking the lower seed. It's a slight edge, but an edge nonetheless. And when you get to those later rounds, those points really add up. Kentucky over Davidson. Now, this is an intriguing matchup. This is the maybe the most exciting game of the opening round. It's a 5-12 matchup. There is a storied history of 12s knocking off 5s. We'll get to that in a second. Davidson, obviously the alma mater of Steph Curry, still have the same coach from that run back in 2008, I believe it was, with Steph Curry. And then Kentucky, obviously, one of the most talented teams in the nation, a very young team, one of John Calipari's younger teams, and that's saying something for Coach Cal. But I'm going to go with the Wildcats. It's tough to go against that talent at Kentucky. It's tough to go against Coach Cal, who has a national title, who has a pedigree of going to Final Fours, whether it's at Memphis or at UMass or obviously at UK, where he won the 2012 national title. And then moving on to our 4-13 matchup, Arizona-Buffalo. I really like the Wildcats of Arizona. I know they've been embroiled in some controversy as of late, but this will be a theme throughout my bracket. I love that NBA talent. I'm a big NBA guy. DeAndre Ayton, he's going to be the #1 overall pick of the upcoming NBA draft next June. I like DeAndre Ayton here, and that's going to be a theme throughout this bracket, so stay tuned. Miami, Florida versus Loyola Chicago. I'm going with the U. I'm going to throw up that U for Jim Larrañaga. He's really done a great job at Miami, really has that program hitting on all cylinders. They've been to the tournament now a handful of years in a row. I'm going to go with the U there, throw up the U for the U. Tennessee over Wright State. As much as I love my Raider round ball, as long as I want to represent the Horizon League, although I do wish it was Cleveland State, I'm going to go with Tennessee. Under Rick Barnes, they've really flown under the radar. They're a sneaky 3 seed. They could actually be a 2 seed, in my opinion. Rick Barnes and them boys. Nevada over Texas. This is an interesting 7 versus 10 matchup. Those 7-10 matchups, much like the 8-9 matchups, tend to favor upsets at times. And I think a lot of people, because they know Texas more than they know Nevada, because Texas has Mo Bamba, a big man who's going to be a high lottery pick in the NBA, I think a lot of people are going to skew Texas. I'm going to go the other way, though. I'm going to go with Nevada. That way, when all of your friends get their upset picks wrong with Texas, you get it right with Nevada, and that gives you, again, one of those extra edges that you're going to need at the end of the tournament. Cincinnati over Georgia State. That's a no-brainer. Book it, as I say. Again, moving on, staying in Cincinnati, Xavier. 1-16 matchup, no need to explain it there. Never pick a 16 seed. If you learn anything from what I say today, never pick a 16 seed. That's really sage advice. And then Missouri, Florida State. I said I favor the 9 matchups more times over the 8. I'm going to go the other way, though. I said I love that NBA talent. Michael Porter Jr. just came back from Missouri. If they had him all season, they'd probably be a 2 or a 3, or maybe even a 1 seed. Who knows? Michael Porter Jr. was the #1 player in the country. I love that NBA talent. I'm going to go with MPJ and Mizzou here. Ohio State, South Dakota State, another one of those 5-12 matchups. I'm an Ohio State alum. I'm wearing an Ohio State pullover. I'm going to go the other way, though. I'm going to go with the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State. Again, just that 5-12 matchup. Ohio State, while they were hot throughout December and January, has kind of cooled off down the stretch. I like Keita Bates-Diop, but South Dakota State can score with the best of them. And this is, again, one of those 12-5 matchups where sometimes you just go with the 12 seed just because it makes sense on your bracket. So I'm going to go against my better judgment. I'm going to pick against the Buckeyes and go with South Dakota State. Gonzaga over UNC Greensboro. Gonzaga is a good team. They are much better than a 4 seed, in my opinion. If I was on that committee, I would have Gonzaga maybe a 2 seed, maybe a 3 seed. Who knows? But I'm going to go with the Zags here. Again, one of those storied programs. Cinderella turned blue blood, arguably. I'd say they're a blue blood in college basketball. Houston over San Diego State. The Cougars, they're on the prowl, so watch out for the Cougars. Michigan over Montana. This has been, I know, a popular upset pick for people looking for that big upset. I don't see it. I like Michigan. I like Mo Wagner. Well, I don't like Mo Wagner. I actually think as an Ohio State fan, he's kind of annoying to play against. But John Beilein has that program hitting on all cylinders, and John Beilein and them boys are going to move on much further than the round of 32. Spoiler alert. Texas A&M versus Providence, I should say. Texas A&M is a very talented team. They have an NBA center on their roster, but I like the 10 seed in this matchup. I like Providence. I think they're a little underseeded as well, so we're going to go with Providence here to pull off the upset over the Aggies, and then UNC over Lipscomb. No-brainer again, and another no-brainer. What did we learn earlier? We learned never pick a 16 seed over a 1 seed. I think that's really smart advice. We're going to go with Nova here. Alabama over Virginia Tech. I like Bama. I was surprised to see they were a 9 seed. Avery Johnson has done at Bama with Colin Sexton. I think Colin Sexton, their point guard, their freshman point guard, is one of the most underrated players in college basketball. I think that Alabama, if they were a little higher and didn't have to run into Nova in the second round, I think they actually have the potential to pull off a run. But they do run into Nova in the second round. So let's just give you that pick now. Nova moving on to the Sweet 16. Who says we have to do this in order, right? West Virginia, or should I say Press Virginia, over Murray State. Wichita State, another underseeded team, in my opinion. I like the Bonnies of St. Bonaventure after winning that play-in game. Sometimes it's people don't like to pick the teams that win the play-in game because they're tired, they're coming off an already hard-fought game. I actually go the other way. I think they go into this game with some momentum. Florida, only a 6 seed. I see the Bonnies moving on to the round of 32, and then Texas Tech, Chris Beard and them boys moving on to the round of 32 as well. I like Arkansas over Butler, although Butler does have that NCAA tournament pedigree. I think Arkansas in the SEC has flown under the radar this year. And then Purdue, arguably the best team in the Big Ten throughout the season. Going with the Boilermakers there. Choo-choo, hop on that train. Kansas over Penn, that's a no-brainer. What did we say? Never a 16 over a 1, no-brainer. Seton Hall, NC State. I'm going with Seton Hall. I know I said I tend to go with the 8 seeds over the 9 seeds, but we're going to go 50-50 this time. I'm going to go Seton Hall. Clemson over New Mexico State. That's another one of those 5-12 matchups. I like New Mexico State in this one. Clemson going from the East Coast to the West Coast. This was a big season for the Tigers, and I think maybe they'll just be satisfied with what they've done in the regular season, and maybe they get upset here. So I'm going to go, and not maybe, you know what? I'm going to guarantee it. I'm going to guarantee New Mexico State tops Clemson. If I can write it correctly. That's another thing that's tough with filling out these brackets is you have to pick where you abbreviate and where you don't. As you can see, I got into a little mess there with New Mexico State where I wasn't sure if I'm going to abbreviate it or not. Never hesitate. Whatever you're going to do, write the full name or write the abbreviation, but you got to go with one or the other. As you see, that's what happens when you hesitate. And then Auburn over Charleston. Tigers under Bruce Pearl, an experienced tournament coach. I like the Tigers in that matchup. TCU versus Syracuse. I like, again, the play-in team. I like Syracuse under Jim Boeheim coming into this game with some momentum. I like that zone that they run, and TCU has been up and down throughout the season. MSU, another underseeded team. Michigan State, Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson. They might be the most talented team in this tournament. And then, of course, you have Tom Izzo. So I like MSU there. And then Oklahoma, Rhode Island. See, this is an interesting one because Trae Young is arguably the most famous player in college basketball, the most exciting player in college basketball. He's been slumping as of late. And as much as we all want to see that Oklahoma-Duke matchup in the second round, I'm going to hedge against it. I'd love to see it. There's no matchup I want to see in this tournament, maybe more than Duke versus Oklahoma. I'm going to go the other way, though. I'm going to go Rhode Island. So if I get that wrong, then I know that I'm at least getting a reward in Trae Young versus Duke, who is also going to move on to the round of 32. Moving on to the round of 32, Virginia over Kansas State. I like Virginia in this. Virginia obviously plays very tough defense. They are the #1 overall seed in the tournament for a region, Tony Bennett and them boys. And then Kentucky versus Arizona, a battle of the Wildcats. And this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be one with a lot of NBA talent on the floor, but I'm going to go with the best player on the floor. That is DeAndre Ayton, the center for Arizona. I almost wrote DeAndre Ayton's name. I might as well have. Sure as heck wasn't going to write Sean Miller's, but Arizona moving on to the round of 32, or to the Sweet 16, and they'll keep moving. Another spoiler alert there. Miami versus Tennessee, a 6 seed versus a 3 seed. I like the U again in this matchup. Miami is a very veteran-laden team. They tend to bode well in this tournament. Again, Jim Larinaga and then Lonnie Walker, three-point specialist, freshman, another NBA talent. Again, I love that NBA talent with Lonnie Walker. So I'm going to go with Miami, the U, to upset Tennessee. Nevada versus Cincinnati. I lean Cincinnati. They're another one of those teams. They've been at the top of the rankings all year, really flown under the radar, in my opinion. I just like the Bearcats in this matchup to move on and face Miami in the Sweet 16. Xavier versus Missouri, upset alert. Again, Michael Porter Jr., if he was playing all year, he would have had Missouri at either a 2 or a 3 seed, maybe even a 1 seed. That's what kind of talent he is. He is, of course, rusty. He hasn't played all that much this season, just until the SEC tournament because of an injury. But he is that a premier NBA talent, and I think that goes a long way in the NCAA tournament. And then going with Gonzaga, going with the experience of the Zags once again. I like Michigan over Houston. And I like UNC over Providence to round out this side of the bracket. Oh, that's right. We already have Nova in our Sweet 16, and we are going to put who are we going to put in there? I got to go back to my bracket. See, that's how tough that West Virginia-Wichita State matchup is, and we are going to go with the Shockers of Wichita State. Again, one of those teams, I think, underseeded in this tournament, better than a 4 seed, in my opinion. And then Texas Tech. As much as I would love to see a Cinderella run for St. Bonaventure, we are going to go with Texas Tech here. Arkansas versus Purdue. I like the Boilermakers again. And this one, their head coach kind of looks like Shane McMahon from WWE, and that is always something you have to consider when you're picking your bracket. Kansas over Seton Hall. Again, Kansas, a very talented team. Maybe the most consistent team, I would argue, in college basketball. In terms of that program and what Bill Self has been able to do there. Auburn, I like over New Mexico State, especially so I don't have to deal with that New Mexico State abbreviation again. I like, in a matchup of blue bloods, I like Michigan State over Syracuse. Again, Miles Bridges and Jaren Jackson. I just think that's too much talent for Cuse, the Orange. And then Duke over Rhode Island. I think that's a no-brainer. Even if that's Oklahoma, I like Duke to move on. Virginia versus Arizona. Upset alert. DeAndre Ayton moving on. So is Sean Miller. So is Arizona, a team embroiled in controversy. They are going to move on to the Elite Eight. for college basketball fans, obviously they know about the investigation into Arizona, the investigation that kind of hangs over college basketball. But I could see this storyline with the Wildcats moving on, becoming a theme throughout the tournament. And then Miami, again, Lonnie Walker, the three-point specialist, Jim Larinaga, upset. Miami, a 6 seed. I have them in my Elite 8 over Cincinnati, the U. Throw it up for the U. Missouri against Gonzaga. I've got the Zags. I had to think about it. Again, Michael Porter Jr. I had to think about it. I'm going Gonzaga, though. I just think they are, again, underseeded. I think they probably, aside from Xavier, aside from North Carolina, I should say, have the second best chance of winning the West region, having that advantage being out West. Too much for Michael Porter and Missouri to overcome. And then Michigan versus UNC. I said it before, I'll say it again. I like Michigan. They're well coached. They have good guard play. They play good defense. Those are usually 3 recipes for success in the NCAA tournament. I'm going with Michigan. Again, I'm a guy wearing an Ohio State pullover, so it hurts my heart. But we're going to go with the Wolverines. Villanova over Wichita State. We're going to go with Villanova. I think Villanova with Jalen Burson and Mikal Bridges, I think they are one of the most talented teams in this tournament. Jay Wright, obviously, a lot of players still left over from that team that won the national title 2 years ago. So we are going to go with Villanova. And then Purdue versus Texas Tech. Choo-choo. Boilermakers, moving on. I like Kansas over Auburn. I just think that's too much NBA talent on the floor for the Jayhawks. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. And then Michigan State versus Duke. I know a lot of people like Michigan State. Again, Jaren Jackson, Miles Bridges, Tom Izzo. That is a heck of a combination. Well-coached NBA talent, defense, good guard play. But I can't go against Duke here. Coach K, Marvin Bagley III, Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen won a national title. It's hard to believe. It feels like a decade ago. He won a national title in 2015, and he is moving on to the Elite 8. Arizona versus Miami for the right to go in the Final Four. As much as I love Lonnie Walker and Jim Larinaga, I can't go against DeAndre Ayton. I think he is that good. Charles Barkley said he is the best college basketball player he has seen in 20 years. You think of the college basketball players we've seen over the last 20 years, the Anthony Davises, the Carmelo Anthonys, the John Walls, the DeMarcus Cousins, Evan Turner, Greg Oden. He says DeAndre Ayton is better than all of them. Who am I to argue against Sir Charles? I am going with the Wildcats. Moving on to the Final Four, Michigan versus Gonzaga. Even though Gonzaga would have the home court advantage here being out on the West Coast, I'm going with Michigan. Again, another well-run program. Mo Wagner, Jim Boeheim. I just think Michigan, they're hot. They're coming off a Big Ten tournament championship. I like the Wolverines there. Again, hurts my heart. I'm wearing an Ohio State pullover, but I can't help but be impressed by what Jim Boeheim has done with the Wolverines program. Jay Wright and Villanova, Jalen Burson, Mikal Bridges, they are moving on to another Final Four. And then Kansas against Duke. This would probably be the most highly anticipated matchup of the NCAA tournament, even though I already said that about Duke versus Oklahoma. It's a coin flip. It really is. But when I flip that coin, it lands on Coach K's head. I'm going with Duke. Duke moving on to the Final Four. Final Four time, Arizona versus Michigan. I've said it once. I'll say it again. I'll say it 100 times. I like DeAndre Ayton. I really do. He's going to be the #1 overall pick, and he is going to carry Arizona and embattled Sean Miller, a program with a cloud hanging over their head. He is going to carry them all the way to the national title game, where he is going to meet with Jay Wright and them boys at Villanova in a national title game, which will be won by the Wildcats of Villanova. Wildcats versus Wildcats matchup in the championship game. I'm going with the Wildcats of Villanova. Jay Wright, Jalen Burson, Mikal Bridges. That is my bracket. I gave you a lot of good advice. What did we learn? We learned NBA talent wins. That's why I'm picking DeAndre Ayton. And we learned never pick a 16 seed over a 1 seed. I know you might be tempted to do so, but I say don't do it. And that's just my advice. That's going to do it for my bracket breakdown. I am Ben Axelrod. I am a digital producer at WKYC. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live.